My name's Adam Hilliard. I'm the Kennet and Pang Fisheries Officer for the Environment Agency, and I'm going to talk to you about a nice little project that we've recently done on the River Pang at Barn Elms. So we're going to talk about general info on the River Pang, what the problem was at this particular site, what we actually did, what we hope to achieve with what we did, and finally the result of that work. So putting a face to a name, that's me on the left there, but more importantly I'm standing in the bit of the River Pang that we did the habitat work on. So as you can see there, this is one of the weirs that we're going to discuss later on in the presentation. So lots of these low-level weirs on the Pang. For whatever reason, the Pang seems to suffer from these throughout its whole length. On their own, not too much of an issue, but in this particular case, there were about 6 of these weirs within a kilometre, so had a massive impact on the sort of natural dynamics of the river in this area. It caused impoundment and hampered fish passage somewhat as well. So this is a map of the River Pang. It rises up at Compton, which is near East Ilsley on the A34 if you've ever driven that way, and it gradually meanders its way around, going underneath the M4 a couple of times where it enters the River Thames at Pangbourne. The lower reaches support coarse fish such as pike, chub, perch and some dace, but the predominant species are trout and minor species as well such as minnows, bullhead, and it also has in certain areas a good population of grayling as well, which is nice to see. So it's a nice little stream, well worth us investing time in to increase the fish population in there, and it's fished in a number of places, so that's important as well, and also trying to encourage wild fish recruitment within these areas, because that's very important for us and for a lot of anglers nowadays. Rather than catching a £3 stockfish in what is a very small river, it's nice to catch some of these wild fish which rise more easily to the fly, and generally a bit nicer to catch than some grotty stocked fish that's not long been in the river and probably still got some pellet in its stomach. So the area that we were looking at in particular for this project was the Barn Elms fishery. There's a series of lakes there, but they also have just over a kilometre of the River Pang, and this particular part of the Pang that we were looking at is actually an artificial channel. The lower channel flows to the north of the channel we were working on, but it was deemed that we could improve this channel, and because it has the majority of the flow, it was our sort of concentrating on this particular channel. So this map shows the lakes, and the upstream and downstream on there show the channel that we were working on. As mentioned, it's an artificial channel. Had a fairly good gradient on it despite having a number of these little weirs. So yeah, it had the potential to produce a nice channel for various different life stages of trout, grayling and other species of fish, as well as improving it for inverts and other animals as well. So this is one of the weirs that is typical of the Pang, a fairly low level weir, put in probably 20 years ago for whatever reason to increase the level of the water upstream of there. In reality, what happens is the water above the weir, it slows down as the water approaches that weir, and any sediment within that water gets dropped out above that weir. So over a number of years, you just end up with a shallow, silty bit of water above the weir. Fish approaching that weir from downstream, most will, under normal conditions, will find it difficult to get over that structure. All but the larger trout, so your grayling and certainly your minor species and most of your coarse fish will struggle to get over that structure there. So it hampers fish migration, and the habitat above the structure is pretty degraded, so they're not good news for the river at all. Another issue that's not just applicable to the Pang is sort of unmanaged tree growth. So trees grow unmanaged. They create a lot of shade in the river. There's very little in-stream and marginal growth, as you can see here. So the diversity within the channel is limited, and banks, because there's very little marginal growth, can become eroded because there's not roots to hold that sort of soil together. There's no cover for juvenile fish, for invertebrates that the fish might eat. So trying to remove some of that tree growth can benefit the river, and it's about having diversity of that as well. So you have areas that are shaded, areas that have full sunlight, and sort of dappled sunlight somewhere in between both of those. So you've got a good mix of light values coming through into the stream and encouraging weed growth, etc. But also areas where it's shaded, and also creating cover for the fish as well. As mentioned, it's an artificial channel that we were working on, so that generally means it's been straightened. So with the weir there, you can see that it's very impounded, but what happens as well, which is a phenomenon because it's a much shorter channel, there's no meanders in there, it has a much steeper gradient, so you've got to manage that as well. So yeah, but you can see pretty slow water above there, although it's not moving. You can tell it's deep. It's actually quite shallow where the silt's built up. Good for stocked fish, relatively easy fishing because the water's slow, but not so good for various life stages of a wild trout or grayling that may be living within that bit of water. So initially we had to deal with these weirs. So the first part of that was basically just removing some of the weirs. The structure of the weirs was fairly novel. So basically there was a big length of concrete that spanned the river, and then against that bit of concrete there were concrete slabs, which turned out to be, I've been informed, sort of pig slabs or pig toilets, which had slats in them and were used in the base of a pigsty. You could clean them out very easily, and apparently they make a very good weir as well. So initially we just removed some of those slats to allow the water to come through, doing that in stages so that we didn't just rush all the silt that had built up behind. So it was just gradual and a bit more of a natural process, and allowed the river to basically acclimatise itself to its new sort of flow regime within this section. So this was done over probably about 3 weeks, gradually removing sections of the weir. It was quite heavy work, but it's something that if your particular fishing club has got these weirs, it could be done within sort of your club members. If there's any issues, if you've got any problems, then speak to your local fisheries officer, who I'm sure would be more than happy to help with this sort of project. So as mentioned, we gradually removed more and more of the weir, and you can see that on the left-hand photo there that the river level has more or less sort of flattened off. So the river above is less impounded. It's pulling through quite nicely, revealing some nice sort of fresh gravel there underneath the decades of silt that had previously built up. So what we wanted to do was, on the right-hand photo there, you can just about see the concrete length that's spanning the river that these pig toilets are lent up against. So these were very, very heavy. So we would have struggled to remove those. They were reinforced as well with metal. So there's no way we could have broken them up. So what we decided to do was to attach a Land Rover winch to them and basically just winch them up. So it's very similar to when we would put bits of woody debris in there, but we were using a bit of concrete, which we hoped would vegetate up and would after a while become unrecognisable as basically a nasty bit of concrete. So the result was that we winched them up to sort of this 45 degree angle, and the flow on the far side was speeded up, started to create nice bits of scour, moving substrate around, sort of sorting the larger and the smaller bits of substrate out. And on the near bank, that water there, although this is fairly high, when this photo was taken, that water on the inside is pretty still, so that's the area where we get a bit of deposition. You'll get some nice weed growth appearing there during the growing season, and there's it's much better than it was before. You've got no impoundment above there, and nice free flow. Fish can get through there very easily, and you've still got a bit of sediment sort of drop off on the near side, which is good for certain species. It's very good for your things like your mayfly larvae and stuff like that. So you want to retain some of those areas. You don't just want all gravel, like you don't want all shade in the river. You want the diversity there for all species, as I say, the mayfly larvae, stuff like brook lamprey, their larval stage relies on sort of nice healthy silt as well. So hopefully that's what we've retained there, and those species will see the benefit as well. So this is the following year. You can see that that bit of concrete in the middle there, and the nice flow on the far side. Relatively slow flow on the inside there nearest us, and you can see a big gap in the trees there, and that's where we started to open up the river to light a bit more. So removing some of the trees where we could, using hand saws, which obviously angling clubs can use safely. We're not allowed to use chainsaws, so it's just hand saws, and that's basically what we did in a morning's work, just removing some of those trees there. And a bonus of that was that some of that brush we actually used on another site. We made up some brush hazel sort of bundles, and we were able to do some bank repairs at another site. So don't just burn the stuff all the time. You can reuse it. So yes, that's another bonus, and it saved us money as well ultimately. So by using that material, but yeah, where we basically unimpounded this section by removing the concrete slats and winching this concrete slab length up, it created a nice riffle above there. So it's obviously quite time consuming opening up that canopy, and this was a good area because there was a nice gravel riffle there. So hopefully by letting that light in, we'll increase the marginal growth, but obviously also the in-stream growth as well. So the Pang does have a good ranunculus growth in certain areas where the flow's good, which obviously that's been encouraged now. There's good flow above that structure. Where there's plenty of light and where the substrate is good as well. So all those are tick boxes now. So hopefully this year we'll see that starting to come into fruition, and the ranunculus growth will be really good through there, and it'll create nice cover for juvenile fish, etc. All the added bonuses of basically having weed growth in the river as opposed to just deep slow section that was silty. So another couple of photos showing how shaded the channel is, but where we've cut into the side of the banks there, cut away some of the trees where we can. Obviously some of the trees there are a little bit big for us, but you have to pick your areas where you're going to have sort of most bang for your buck effectively. So so hopefully, yeah, we'll see an increased weed growth within that channel this coming spring. So as well as removing some of those weirs and letting in some of the light, we wanted to create some diversity within the channel itself. So where these systems, sort of chalk streams, normally very low gradient, they have very little power within them. So so the bed of the river becomes very uniform. It's very flat. You know, quite an interesting. So you can see we've put in two bits of woody debris in this particular area. So what happens is the water works around this. It creates slow areas behind the wood nearest the bank. So you get partial sort of narrowing of the flow of the channel. But where the water works against the edge towards the middle of the picture there, against this bit of woody debris, you get scouring around that bit of wood. So you get a deeper hole on the edge of it. So that creates sort of a bit of difference within the channel. Rather than being a flat sort of boring bed, you create these areas where you have scour, deposition, you know, the river's working against these structures and moving the substrate around. Again, a very easy technique for angling clubs to do. Lots of information on websites such as the Wild Trout Trust about how to put these bits of wood in and what you have to do to go through the process of being able to put them in. Effectively, you use a specialised drill to drill a couple of holes into the wood. Then we use metal spikes with a washer on them, bang those into the gravel. They pin a bit of wood down. It looks all very natural, yeah, very, very easy, you know, to do. But there's certain issues, health and safety stuff you have to go through. For example, making sure there's no pipes of any type around there and stuff like that. That's very important. But as I say, the Wild Trout Trust are very good. They've got some very good information on these particular habitat techniques, or again, contact your local fisheries officer for that info on from them as well. So this is another example of a bit of wood we've put in there that's already collected a bit of watercress. So you can see to the right of the watercress there, it's already starting to scour out a deeper hole, sorting out the gravel as the water's working and speeding up against there. And there will be sedimentation behind that. It will slow the water down, so you'll get a narrowing of the channel there where it's perhaps a little bit over wide. So it's just about making the channel during the low flow times just a bit more resilient, and keeping, you know, the wild fish happy in there, keeping gravels clean when the fish are thinking about spawning, creating those deeper holes during lower flows as well, so the fish aren't left with very shallow flows and open to predation, and generally, you know, a bit more, they can get a bit more stressed, which causes issues as well. So yeah, but just by creating a diversity within the channel, you're opening yourself up for different eventualities with flows, etc. So so it's going to benefit the river, it benefits the fish, and hopefully the person that's trying to catch those fish. So this photo shows what we were dealing with initially. A very slow, wide channel that had a history of these little weirs, which when the river, under normal flows, when it would just start sort of getting going, and then it would hit another one of these weirs, so the flow would slow, there would be drop out of sedimentation, the water above the weirs would silt up. So very simple stuff, really. If your fishing club has got a section of river like this where it's relatively small and you've got these weirs, it's worth contacting your local fisheries officer just to see what the options are, because it doesn't always mean that it holds bigger fish by just having these structures in because the water's deeper above there. as we've shown with this, the water actually became deeper when we removed the structures, because there was so much silt above these weirs that built up over the years that it become actually very, very shallow, sort of stagnant water that was no good to the river. You couldn't fish there either; it was too shallow. So yeah, well worth looking into removing these structures. And this is what we've got today. A river that's much happier. It's moving around the bits of woody debris that we've introduced, much more resilient to flows. Fish are able to spawn within that gravel now. Once the light comes through in the areas that we've cleared, you'll have marginal growth, in-stream vegetation growth, which will create extra cover for the juvenile fish as well, which will increase their survival. But we've still got the deeper pools for the adult fish, and areas that are a bit easier to cast in as well. So, everything's ticked there. Spawning, juvenile fish, adult fish. They're all there now, rather than just habitat that was suitable for stocked fish. So now hopefully, once that population becomes sort of bolstered, then it will provide a really good fishing opportunity in this particular part of the world.